It is Friday, January 11th, 2018, or 19 rather. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was a very fun, get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Friday. I actually got some nice arm triangles in today, and one Kimura. And so it was fun on that part, but mostly it was kind of a synthesis of what we were talking about on Wednesday's episode about the style of class. And in all honesty, I think between the three styles that we've gone through now, where the first one was to see the move, do the move, see the progression, do the progression, and do that for like 5 steps through. That was the first version. The second version was to drill the move and then to spar the move. Start from the position where the move would be coming in and go from there. And then today we did kind of a synthesis where we actually got 2 rolling sessions in, but the rolling sessions weren't entirely contingent on the movement itself, and that was kind of like the difference there. The first we did kind of a flow roll kind of thing, and there's always something with flow rolls where you either have somebody who is like 8 billion moves ahead of you, and you're just moving, and that's kind of how flow rolling is supposed to go. And then you have people that want to turn it into the Vale Tudo. And there's always that gray area somewhere in between, right? Where it's like you're stopping and going, and you're pausing yourself, going, okay, I'm going way too hard. This is supposed to be flow rolling. So relax, get a breath, and really, I think that's what the whole point of it is. It's not even the movements. It's not even the progressions. It's the knowing when you're getting too far ahead of yourself. It's like, do I really need to panic right now? Do I really need to be breathing this hard? Do I really need to be straining this hard from this position? I better check myself and adjust accordingly. Because it's really in those spots where all of a sudden the whole situation in my mind, it turns into like a 3-dimensional chessboard, and suddenly I know all the pressure points that are being contacted between me and my opponent, and I can like see in my mind and like feel in my body the places where we're not contacting, and it's like this instantaneous thing. Like I pulled this really fucking neat switch today on my opponent, where he was on top of me, and or kind of, I think it was in like a half guard position, where I reached down around his ankle and I pulled his thigh to my chest, right? And then I snuck my other shoulder through between his legs, and then exited back through the back way. And I had his leg tangled up with mine from the knee down to the ankle, so it's not like he could have moved out from there. But anyway, like I pulled this really neat switch, and it was one of those moments where I was feeling him going really, really hard, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, am I going too hard? And like, as soon as that clicked in, man, it was, like I said, it was like this big 3-dimensional fucking chessboard opened up in my brain, and I saw it, and I'm just like, if I just reach down around his ankle here, and I pull his thigh in really tight, I can sweep him. and it was one of those things where, like, normally I'm like thinking that through when I'm doing it, and it's like when it was happening this time, it was like I was reaching instead of thinking about reaching. It's like my body was just doing the fucking thing that I'm doing as a scenario in my brain. It's like, okay, if I grab a hold of this guy, if I hook it under his shin and I pull that thigh into me and then pop up on my knees, I'm gonna be able to flip him over. And that's exactly what I did. It was fucking awesome. So anyway, that one, and then there was another one. It was the second arm triangle that I got this guy in, because I mean, he literally just walked into it, and as a matter of fact, it was so obvious that as soon as his elbow cleared my neck and he got his armpit up onto my neck, he's like, touche. I fucking heard him say it. Oh shit. I'm just gonna have to wrench it down and finish it off. And so he did try and get out of it though, and I commend him for that. I was really impressed with this movement, because the guy was like, I want to say maybe 40-50 pounds lighter than me. Certainly wirier. I carry a lot more fat than he does. But anyway, yeah, it was kind of a trip, because like I say, he was really, really strong. And I told him at the end of it, I said, look, with a bigger guy like me, what you need to remember is that I've got big parts. You know, I've got big arms, I've got bigger legs than you do. That's not a problem, because that also means that I've got bigger gaps between my arms and my arm and my body and my legs and my body. You know, it's like when I try and scrunch up, the gaps that I have in between, like, you know, say if I got into a full turtle, okay, the gaps between my elbows and my knees are bigger than the gaps between his elbows and his knees. He can get smaller. And so one of the things I noticed, and I really wanted to stop him and talk to him about it afterward, was that when we started out in the what do you call it, in positional sparring, or it wasn't even positional sparring, it was just a sparring session. We did start from the ground, and I told him, I go, man, I really want to show you this neat takedown that I learned, because it's not all that violent. You know, and as a matter of fact, it's probably the gentlest takedown I've ever learned, that I was able to control my opponent really easily on the way down. And the amount of actual force that was required to displace my opponent is teeny, tiny. I mean, like, for somebody like him, it would be ideal, because it's like you're not operating on your own strength with this one, where you've got your, say, your left foot forward, and they've got their right foot forward, right? So you're southpaw with them, and you get a hold of their sleeve, right? And you pull it to you. Now with him, he's not all that strong. He's probably not going to be able to pull my arm to him. I mean, by comparison to me in particular, he's the lesser advantaged, I should say. So even if he is able to pull my arm a little bit away, my natural reaction is going to be to pull that arm back. I want to get that arm out of his control. Well, with him, he's so light by comparison to me that if I yanked back on my arm, he could be all the way up on my hip before I even fucking know it. If I'm able to get my wrist back to my side, he's right there. He's got the leg. And a single leg takedown all day long. All he's got to do is hook the ankle from behind and just pull. He doesn't even have to, like, push me over. He's so deep into me from there. All he would have to do is just hook the ankle and just maybe a little nudge with the shoulder, and I'm over. I love that fucking takedown. So anyway, I wanted to tell him that, because what he was doing from where we started off, he really laid way back. And like, you know, the problem with that is that he's all spread out, you know? I mean, it's like I could just pick a body part to attack, you know? And when I'm in a position like that, where my opponent is way bigger than me, I try to make myself as tiny as possible. Teeny, tiny. You know, if it goes to the ground and they're on top of me or whatever, I just try and pull my elbows in, pull my knees in, tiny, compress, you know, maybe capture an arm or something like that and roll, you know, because especially if they're still standing. I mean, because that's a whole different game then. If they're still standing and I'm able to get tiny, it's all about leverage. It's all about leverage. Anyway, enough with that, you know. And so, like I said, I had a really good class today, and having a little bit of trouble remembering exactly what we were working on, though. No, but that's what it was. It's the it was an arm triangle, but it's a different, or not an arm triangle. It's an arm bar. My apologies. But it doesn't involve your legs at all, and it was an interesting movement. You go up in with double underhooks. You get a gable grip on the back. You pull them down. When they are trying to pull up, you hook over one of the arms and do your gable grip over the top, and then roll the elbow down and get that arm bar in. And I had a lot of trouble figuring out to get my hip right under it. And that was one of the things, is I was just trying to lean over to one side and do it, and I wasn't able to get the right angle that way. But my partner, he was keen enough to point that out to me, and I think like the last 2 or 3, I got him kind of right. Or far more right than they had been. I'll just say that much. Is I was able to feel the angle. Then it's like, oh, okay, if I can get my hip down on the ground and the other one popped up, I can get that knee shield in there and extend just far enough to where I can get behind that elbow and roll it down. I liked it a lot. Anyway, it is with that I want to go ahead and throw down into some music. And now, this is very rare that anybody does this, but I would like to let you guys know that I do take requests, and I'm in the Discord and also the Telegram for Verge Currency. So if you've heard something that you want to hear again, or maybe something you've never heard, I may actually have it. No guarantees. If I do have it, though, I will play it. And this particular gentleman, back in the day, he was one of the earliest of the crypto media producers. Goes by the name of oh, it wasn't Mad Bitcoins. That was a different guy. Oh, my apologies. Bitcoin Rush. And those of you who were around, you probably remember him. And so this one goes out to you, Mr. Rush. First Dance, Slipknot, the Heretic Anthem, here on Coin Metal. And that was Skindred with Nobody. Yeah. And so, as far as what we're going to get into today, it's far from me to FUD any projects in this space. Although it looks like my program is kind of chewy at the moment. It's not a problem. Got it recording, so as soon as it glitches out, I can close it. Then I can, dude, I must be like crashing the server or something. And it happens, Sometimes it happens where, we just like crash the server because a lot of people tune in, and it's a good thing. Anyway, as far as what we're going to get into today, I typically do not talk about like negative stuffing about coins, because for the most part I want shit to succeed in this space. I want people's attention and their money and whatnot to be properly dedicated in this space. And that's why, when I do see something that I find kind of questionable, I have to acknowledge it, And so anyway, I got this thing here. It's on breakermag.com. Exclusive. Former BitTorrent exec says there's, quote, no way its token can run on Tron. And that's by David M. Morris, January 11th, 2019. And now, I'm just going to say it right now, I don't know enough about Tron to say definitively whether or not I think he's correct. But there are certain things, and those of us who were actually here during Alt Bloom 1, we had an opportunity to see a lot of the same patterns that we even see today in like ICOs and whatnot, where people misrepresent things, whether it's by intention or, the exuberance of your first cocaine high or something. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I've never launched a coin or an ICO, and so, I've never been there. Anyway, so here it is. Last week, the blockchain platform Tron announced it would launch a, quote, BitTorrent token, a cryptocurrency that would link to the BitTorrent file sharing client, and, in the words of the BitTorrent token whitepaper, which we are going to click on, and if it's small enough, we'll actually read it. It's only 22 pages. But you know what? I've heard some stuff about this, and I don't know how deep we're going to get into that business. Anyways, so let me get back to this story here. If I can find the damn thing. No. Yes. There we go. Tron supporters and investors have been exuberant since the announcement. Tron CEO Justin Sun has described BTT as, quote, the token that will enable blockchain mass adoption. Sun has continued his long-standing habit of commenting frequently on the price of Tron tokens, which were up as much as 50% in the week after BTT's unveiling. Pardon me. Tron holders will receive a share of BTT through an airdrop, so the TRX price rally implies that the market believes in Sun's plans for BTT. Of course, the skeptical case against BTT is simple. BitTorrent has been running just fine without a token for more than a decade. Was this just another, quote, shit token? A token that provided no real utility except extracting a few bucks from credulous investors? To find out more, Breaker reached out to a number of current and former Tron executives, including Justin Knoll, current lead of Tron's BitTorrent integration. We didn't hear back from Knoll, but we did hear from Simon Morris, who spent nearly a decade as an executive at BitTorrent. Most recently, following his short departure during a shakeup that is a story of its own. Morris was BitTorrent's chief strategy officer, tasked with exploring the potential of blockchain and cryptocurrency. Quote, initially it was just, hey, there's a crazy bubble going on. Let's join in, Morris admits. But he and his team, which he says was composed of some of the best engineering talent that had passed through BitTorrent over the years, discovered that there could be serious utility to, quote, tokenizing their software. Automated auctions to prioritize download queues, Morris says, could make the entire BitTorrent network as much as 40% faster. Now, Tron says it will implement something like what Morris conceptualized. There's only one problem. According to Morris, there's, quote, no way the Tron blockchain can handle the transaction volume needed to tokenize BitTorrent. And Morris thinks there's little reason to believe Tron's claims about BitTorrent token or anything else. Quote, it seems they're going in the same direction as our plan, Morris told Breaker, but what's very clear is that they're going to say they're going in the same direction, come what may, because that's what Tron does. It's basically a marketing machine layered on a very thin veneer of technology. Morris would know. As BitTorrent CSO during and after the acquisition, Morris says he visited Tron operations in China and spent, quote, a decent amount of time with Sun. Of Sun, Morris says, quote, it's very clear that Justin is very strong at marketing. He has a very nice personality from a marketing point of view. He doesn't have a technical bone in his body. He wouldn't understand technically anything, but the approach that bothered me was the very sort of Trumpian approach. If you get caught in a lie, the answer is you double down on the lie. It was the endless doubling down on lies that made me think it wasn't going to be a fit. Morris says the Tron acquisition of BitTorrent was essentially complete by May 2018. Morris left BitTorrent in July as the acquisition became public after concluding that, quote, the path to building any sort of relationship of trust with the people in charge at Tron looked completely impossible. Tron did not respond to a request for comment on on Morris's criticisms, but they align with some very public embarrassments suffered by Sun and Tron, including evidence that the network's initial white paper was partially plagiarized, and that Tron has used code without proper attribution. Quote, I had very candid conversations with Sun about the plagiarized white papers, Morris recounts. I said, Justin, maybe what you should do is acknowledge the fact that you were young and scrappy, and maybe this happened, but now you've moved on and you're sincerely building things. I told him this was probably a preferable way to communicate in Silicon Valley than to pretend it didn't happen. His reaction was to say, quote, we have come to consensus that this did not happen, and we have moved on. Which is obviously hard to maintain because there's actual proof of plagiarism out there. And according to Morris, it's unlikely Tron can actually execute transactions at the rate needed to make a tokenized BitTorrent work. Quote, it was very clear when I was at BitTorrent that there's no way the transaction capacity of Tron would work, says Morris, sounding more bemused than angry. The transaction capacity we were looking at was needing hundreds of transactions a second just to get started. It's simply not there. You hear all the bullshit out there, oh, this does 10,000 transactions a second, it's all crap. We were going to melt Tron. Literally destroy it. Why then does Morris think that Tron is ignoring this obvious barrier? Again, he suspects a blurry line between marketing and outright deception. Quote, I suspect that what they're really going to do is they'll do it on some central server. They'll wave their hands and say, oh look, it's a Lightning network for Tron or something, and pretend it's Tron based, but it's not really Tron based. Morris, who has continued to work on blockchain projects after leaving BitTorrent, also threw cold water on Tron's broader technical claims. Quote, all the nonsense about, oh, it's the best blockchain ever, it's so much better than Ethereum. It's not. It's a fork of Ethereum J. They didn't even bother to apply the security updates subsequently. In a June 2018 analysis, the firm Digital Asset Research determined that Tron's Java Tron client was, quote, derived from Ethereum J. This borrowing was, for a time, not acknowledged by Tron. The alleged implausibility of Tron's plans for BitTorrent token is particularly disappointing because the idea for tokenizing BitTorrent that Morris developed is so clever. BitTorrent works by breaking up big files into pieces as they're downloaded by a swarm of machines, which in turn pass the file on to others. BitTorrent's efficiency is determined in large part by which members of a downloading swarm get files first. If users with the fastest internet connections get their downloads first, they can seed the file, making them available for other downloaders and in turn letting everyone download faster. But determining who really has the fastest connection and thus should be first in line for a download isn't easy. BitTorrent currently uses a kind of internal barter system to try to spot the best connections. But according to Morris, a tokenized system would be much better. The mechanism would reward fast seeders with tokens, while those leeching files would automatically bid for a place in line, based on a fixed and uniform proportion of the total amount of BitTorrent token held in the client. Over time, Morris says, wallet balances would become good indicators of the quality of a participant's connection. Of course, that mechanism means that someone with a poor connection could buy BitTorrent token rather than earning it, and effectively jump in line by masquerading as a peer with a fast connection. But Morris says this would amount to a revenue stream for BitTorrent, while inflicting a relatively minor penalty on the efficiency of the overall system. Morris says BitTorrent was well aware that most users aren't likely to pay for their downloads, but users could opt out of the token system entirely and benefit from the increased efficiency, a point that Tron has continued to make as it explains its plans. All of this is still plausible under Tron's direction. It's just not likely, according to Morris, that it will actually run on the Tron blockchain. BitTorrent, of course, is decentralized for a reason. Since leaving BitTorrent, or more precisely since leaving Tron, Morris has spent his time reflecting on the lessons blockchain companies can learn about decentralization from the history of BitTorrent. One point he makes is that, quote, in spite of its incredibly disruptive influence on the media industry and the flood of illegal activity that it seems to have enabled, BitTorrent has proven to be unbelievably robust, largely because it has no single legal or technical structure to attack. If Morris's assessments are correct, Tron's BitTorrent token might not share its namesake's durability. You know, I can see a lot of the point here. Where I would differ in opinion is this, that I've been saying it pretty much every episode for quite a while now, that cryptocurrencies are supposed to increase in adoption by you, or like they're supposed to scale with adoption, meaning that you are supposed to be a node, a miner, a participant in the network. Now, I know ASICs have thrown that off and whatnot, but, you know, more participants means that you could be supporting a specific thing that maybe is already out there, you know, a variant of a coin or Bitcoin itself. And you might not be doing it at a quote-unquote profit, but you would be participating. And so your participation increases the strength of the network. It also increases the security of the network. But, you know, you do have to be mindful of what version of the software that you're running and what you want to run as a miner. But, you know, people bitch about the loss of control, you know, that you know, oh, China's doing all the mining and blah, blah. You know what? That's your own fault. It's because you don't have any miners in your closet. You want to change your level of influence on what goes on the network, you got to be part of the network. That's all there is to it. And so now with Tron, I can see some sort of, I don't know how to say this, incentive structure whereby the token itself could be a good utility token for using to increase the overall efficiency of the BitTorrent network. But the thing that would be really smart would be to have have the ability to use other cryptocurrencies instead. You know, so rather than making an overlay over BitTorrent that will be based on an issued number of coins or whatnot, because that's really where all your liability comes in. If you're the custodian or you're the guy with the magic wand that can wave the magic wand and change the conditions and the protocols and all that other business, you've assumed liability for that. So if you fuck up, the responsibility is now yours, and the legal liability is now yours, and the people that lost money are going to be coming to you. So rather than doing that and putting all of that bullshit on yourself, what I think would be a better way to do it would be to make it open to other people to use with other cryptocurrencies. So rather than bothering with this BitTorrent token or whatnot, maybe you could make it exchangeable for the token in question. So say there's a Doge miner out there, and he's mining away Doge. He doesn't have any Tron, and he wants his downloads to go a little bit faster. So he's either got to mine Tron, which I don't know if that's actually an option. I think it's like some issued token or whatever. I don't know how the whole thing works. Hopefully, when we read the white paper, we'll find out. But anyway, you would acquire the token to be able to download faster with your Doge, right? So the Doge miner comes to you and he says, look, man, I don't have any fucking, BitTorrent token. I need some BitTorrent token, but all I got is Doge. We'd be willing to take Doge. People talk about all the like interoperability and all the atomic swappers and all that other bullshit. I don't see why you couldn't do something like that, like some sort of internal exchange or whatnot based on, the current market valuation of Tron versus Doge, some sort of direct exchange. You determine an exchange rate based on the average market, so you got like 6 exchanges out there that you're hooked up to through an API or some shit like that, and so you've got a real-time pricing for the exchange rate for any particular cryptocurrency out there. That's what they talk about. I think that's the alternative of what they talk about with market depth. See, a lot of times when economists and whatnot talk about market depth, they're talking about liquidity that's then used as collateral for some other derivative that's then used as collateral for another derivative. That's what they talk about with quote-unquote market depth. There's a bunch of dependents, and so if anybody in between fucks up on paying, it fucks everybody in the chain. And it's usually at the base when that happens, too. Anyway, with this, I think the possibility for people to be paying for it in Verge or Litecoin or Monero would be, I don't know, I think that's a pretty cool idea, really. Maybe if you had some sort of direct link with exchanges on your side of things and let them assume the liability of determining the price rate and all that. I don't know. I think there's something there, though. That could be your market depth that everybody worries about. I think it's kind of silly that a lot of people look to the legal machinations to determine which way to go, and they listen to the cues that are provided by the entities that are currently in it. And this one, I don't know if I want to get into this one right now, because we're going to cover the white paper for Tron, and that's 22 pages, so I don't know. Let's go for Tron. BitTorrent token white paper, because we got to do it. Abstract, and we might not even get any further than this. Honestly, it looks like a pretty healthy abstract, but we're already on page 2. So, BitTorrent token abstract. Tron Foundation and BitTorrent Foundation are introducing a new cryptographic token called BTT, along with an extended version of the BitTorrent protocol, in order to create a token-based economy around the usage of networking, bandwidth, and storage on hundreds of millions of computers on the internet. Our initial entry point is to introduce a token-based optimizations to the existing BitTorrent protocol, providing a way for the value of sharing bandwidth and storage to be captured by network participants beyond the point at which the current protocol no longer values it. Our longer-term vision is to broaden the usage of BitTorrent far beyond current use cases, to provide distributed infrastructure platform to third-party app developers and enable consumers to continuously distill small amounts of value from their devices by allowing others to make use of their spare resources. Yeah, okay. I can see a potential for a little bit of fuckery right here. Anyway, continuing on. The first step in our project will be to create a market-driven mechanism to enable consumers to collaborate to optimize and prolong the lifespan of existing BitTorrent swarms. Using additional extensions to BitTorrent, we will subsequently open up opportunities for distributed app developers to launch new apps making use of infrastructure provided by existing BitTorrent clients, which already constitute a distributed network storage platform of unprecedented scale. These new apps will be able to offer incentives, BTT, to users in return for access to cost-effective platform resources comprised of an incredibly broad collection of already deployed network endpoints. In other words, they're going to be ghost mining on existing seeders. The position of these endpoints at the very edge of the internet will have the additional appeal to developers, being extremely difficult for net neutrality adversaries to interdict. Actually, not really, because you're still using their network resources. Finally, the ability of consumers to capture the value of their contributed computing resources with a cryptographic token will give rise to a completely new transactional mechanism for internet consumers that is distinct from either their attention or their credit card. Yeah, I can see some profitability there, but you're probably also going to be using their download data and selling it. Monetize it, baby. With over 100 million monthly active users and millions of additional new installs every week, BitTorrent already manages one of the largest distributed computing ecosystems on the internet. By integrating BTT tokens and transaction processing, we will both address existing limitations of BitTorrent and open up a whole new borderless economy exchanging value for computer resources on a global scale. This will be a realization and extension of the vision expressed by Satoshi Nakamoto in the original Bitcoin Whitepaper on its 10th anniversary. And that's a neat idea, really. Whether or not you can actually execute it with the existing network is a whole different story. I think that's one of the points that Homeboy missed, is he's just looking at Tron's network and saying, oh yeah, there's no way it can do it, right? He's not looking at BitTorrent's network and saying, gosh, can this be added as an underlying kind of layer, which I think is probably the bigger intent here. The Tron Foundation and BitTorrent Foundation are legal entities incorporated in the Republic of Singapore. BitTorrent Foundation 2019 version 0.8.5, or I'm sorry, 085, version 08.5. Why the fuck would you do that, dude? Put like an 0.08.5 or whatever. Working draft, subject to change. Key element there. Let's see here. And so, let's get into it. Hopefully there's some like diagrams in here so we can skip a few pages. Or math. We don't read math on here. Background. What is BitTorrent? BitTorrent is a pioneering distributed communication protocol invented by Bram Cohen in 2001. It is a peer-to-peer protocol which uses economic incentives to facilitate the delivery of large and highly demanded files around the internet, eliminating the need for a trusted central server. It is an open protocol that has been independently implemented dozens of times and included in software that has been downloaded and installed billions of times in the past 16 years. Today, the protocol is in regular use on well over 100 million internet-connected computing devices each month. The protocol is continuously updated through an open process of BitTorrent Enhancement Protocols, BEPs, moderated on the developer website. BitTorrent, the protocol. The BitTorrent protocol enables client software endpoints, clients, to collaborate with each other to enable incredibly efficient and reliable distribution of large files to multiple clients. It does this by attempting to make simultaneous, efficient use of every client's upload and download bandwidth to balance peer-to-peer content delivery across a swarm of cooperating clients and reduce the reliance on any single weak point, like the connection to a server, which, never mind. The key to understanding how the protocol works is to understand how the underlying economic incentives are implemented. The protocol is based on a system where files are cut into pieces and pieces are traded between multiple devices, which are all trying to get the file at the same time. Cryptographic hashes, info hashes of the pieces, are used to verify that the pieces being shared are indeed the pieces requested. The system essentially implements a barter economy where individual clients collaborate based on trading pieces of a file they each are trying to download, with delivery bandwidth used as the deciding factor for whom to keep bartering with. Various mechanisms reward the most productive barter exchanges with further barter and punish the least productive ones by disconnecting or even banning the counterparty. Once the client has completed downloading a file, if it continues to upload pieces despite no longer requiring any upload in return, it is considered a seed. The default in most clients is to seed to other downloaders, but this activity is entirely altruistic, and there is no economic penalty for end users switching off their BitTorrent client and stop seeding. BitTorrent, the ecosystem. The BitTorrent protocol has been implemented many times, and there is healthy competition between companies maintaining different implementations as well as very popular volunteer-maintained versions. As well as client software that implements the BitTorrent protocol, there are infrastructure providers who independently offer useful services, ergo trackers, which introduce peers, torrent sites which index metadata about files being shared and provide access to their associated torrents. This demonstrates how an array of cooperating distributed elements, clients, and semi-distributed elements, trackers, torrent sites, have been successful in maintaining a long-lived and highly robust ecosystem, even in the presence of highly motivated attackers. We rely on many lessons learned in the BitTorrent ecosystem as we put together this project plan. BitTorrent, the company. BitTorrent protocol is the world's largest decentralized protocol with over 1 billion users. Far surpassing the second-ranked decentralized application of Bitcoin. As of October 21, 2018, Bitcoin has a total number of 29.44 million addresses. BitTorrent Inc. invented and maintains the BitTorrent protocol. While there are many implementations of the BitTorrent software, BitTorrent and uTorrent, often called uTorrent, remain two of the most popular. In 2018, BitTorrent protocol reached a strategic partnership with Tron blockchain protocol. The collaboration of the two makes Tron protocol the world's largest decentralized ecosystem. It also makes BitTorrent protocol the biggest decentralized application in the world. The average usage of software managed by BitTorrent Inc. is incredibly widespread around the world. Software clients maintained by BitTorrent Inc. are in use today by approximately 100 million monthly active users in almost every country in the world, with around 1 million new software installs every day. Over 160 countries have more than 10,000 users, and 23 countries have more than 1 million users. 19 countries have more than 5% of their internet users using our software, comprising almost 60 million users. Furthermore, while there are other providers of BitTorrent software, BitTorrent Inc. clients currently account for an estimated 40% of current BitTorrent protocol activity on the public internet. BitTorrent and distributed apps. BitTorrent Foundation has been exploring distributed applications for over a decade. We have investigated adaptations of the BitTorrent protocol as well as entirely novel protocols with the aim of providing services ranging from distributed messaging, BitTorrent-based CDN, peer-to-peer live video streaming, file synchronization, and distributed websites. The incredibly exciting emergence of blockchain technologies has brought a paradigm shift to what is achievable, enabling collaboration between untrusted parties to be persisted over much longer periods than is practical in the BitTorrent ecosystem. But while many new decentralized protocol proposals are suggesting ambitious technical paths forward, almost all are silent on how to address the enormous marketing challenge of building critical mass, which is a crucial technical necessity for all distributed systems. Even the few projects which are introducing a cryptographic token to existing user bases have no experience with the BTTLE of art of designing a protocol which effectively balances many economic interests at scale. We seek to combine the critical mass of existing BitTorrent ecosystem, protocol engineering expertise from BitTorrent Foundation, and new capabilities introduced by blockchains as pioneered by platforms like Tron. By integrating blockchain technologies to provide a reliable and scalable mechanism to store and exchange value, we can enable new decentralized applications to be bootstrapped on top of our existing ecosystem. We believe that expanding the BitTorrent ecosystem in combination with blockchain technologies will enable developers of decentralized apps to build on top of it and help BitTorrent address a universe of exciting new opportunities. We believe that BitTorrent is by far the closest to being able to introduce the infrastructure to support the upcoming decentralized web and the economy to support it. Yeah, there's one problem with that, dude. It's all based on existing infrastructure. You need to make different physical infrastructure in order to break away from the existing physical infrastructure. Yeah, that's a fine point that a lot of people seem to miss in all of this shit. Project origins. This project evolved in the light of three basic insights. Number one, there is a huge and entirely unrealized opportunity for the application of decentralized BitTorrent technology to many new use cases, and the market is more than ready for it now than it has ever been before. Number two, operation of the BitTorrent protocol today suffers from structural inefficiencies which limit the lifespan of BitTorrent swarms and so limit its overall effectiveness as a protocol. Number three, most consumers, including BitTorrent users, are reluctant to pay with fiat currency for things online. The corollary is that people pay with their, quote, attention, which leads directly to a web dominated by privacy-destroying information monopolies. Yes, as we've seen with social media. We are setting out to improve and extend BitTorrent to address these insights with a project that marries the best of BitTorrent and blockchain technologies. We will transform BitTorrent to create an infrastructure platform for building elements of the decentralized web, enabling app developers to directly reward consumers who provide the underlying resources and enabling consumers to use this, quote, found value to transact with publishers and app developers directly without involving fiat currency. It's not just about that, dude. You gotta do it without involving third parties. Period. Anyway, continuing on. To accelerate introduction, we will start by addressing inefficiencies with how BitTorrent works today. This will stimulate a strong pull for the foundation technology and broad familiarity among consumers with the existence of a token and the user experience and economies around its use. In parallel, we will work with third-party developers to develop and promote APIs and the marketplace for distributed infrastructure services based broadly on networking and storage primitives, which are staples within existing BitTorrent technology. We will also work with third-party publishers and app developers beyond the existing BitTorrent ecosystem on services which consumers may spend their tokens on. In the fullness of time, hundreds of millions of end users around the world will be equipped with a robust new way to distill small amounts of value out of their own technical resources and have many opportunities to spend that value on services of their own choosing. High-level project description. We will extend the BitTorrent protocol to introduce a new Tron TRC10 cryptographic token called BitTorrent BTT in order to implement a new distributed infrastructure services economy. Within this economy, end users may offer infrastructure services in small increments in return for tokens, with a blockchain solution for a new store of value and medium of exchange that will scale to meet the expected demand. To speed token adoption, we will launch a feature called BitTorrent Speed to optimize the operation of BitTorrent within the existing ecosystem. The introduction of this feature will solve problems within BitTorrent, as well as prove the effectiveness of using blockchain-based rewards for provision of infrastructure services in small increments across a very large installed base. We will address challenges around rolling out distributed ledger-based transaction processing with low latency on a very large scale. Finally, we will generalize these services offered by BitTorrent clients and make them available to external application developers as a platform on top of which future decentralized apps can be launched. I'm feeling a lot of repeat speak here, Anyway, continuing on. In the following subsections, we will first outline BitTorrent BTT cryptographic tokens around which we plan to build a new economy. Second, we present the blockchain technology on top of which transaction processing will operate. Third, we will, I'm more interested in number 2, honestly. Third, we will outline the proposed approach to optimize the existing BitTorrent protocol called BitTorrent Speed. Fourth, we will describe how BitTorrent Speed will be optimized with BitTorrent BTT tokens. Fifth, we will discuss the generalization of BitTorrent BTT services to describe some of the first decentralized applications being built on top of it. BTT cryptographic tokens and blockchain. BitTorrent is introducing a Tron TRC10 cryptographic token called BitTorrent BTT. Not confusing at all, is it? To act as a general purpose mechanism for transacting in computing resources shared between BitTorrent clients and any other participating service requesters and service providers. BTT will be the unit which denominates transactions for the provision of different services in the BTT-enabled BitTorrent ecosystem. BTT will be made available as a divisible token, allowing for very fine-grain pricing for an evolving set of services with a liquid market of service requesters and service providers. BitTorrent Inc. will deploy an on-chain/off-chain exchange which exists to facilitate the transfer of tokens between a high-performance private ledger and the public Tron blockchain. BitTorrent Speed, incentives to boost swarm lifespan. observed previously, BitTorrent swarms suffer from structural inefficiencies which lead to frequent premature deterioration or even the death of swarms. Due to bandwidth asymmetry, files frequently complete downloading long before a peer has been able to upload an equivalent amount of bytes. Once the downloading peer has the entire file, there is insufficient economic incentive remaining to continue to make the file available to downloaders, seeding. As a result of people leaving swarms without contributing as much bandwidth as they have consumed, many BitTorrent swarms do not last long as they otherwise could. Also it reduces the liability on the end receiver of the seed because the link to them is disconnected rapidly. Anyway, continuing. In some cases, it is possible for a swarm to allow the completion of a download even in the absence of a seed. The possibility is computed and displayed in some clients as an availability metric, typically expressed as the number of distributed copies available. If there is at least one active non-seed peer holding each of the pieces, then the file is said to be available. The BitTorrent protocol includes the design decision as rarest first, which dictates that when a client faces a choice of which of its remaining undownloaded pieces to request, it should prefer to request the pieces it knows are held by the fewest peers in the set to which it is connected. This mechanism is intended to flatten the distribution of pieces to decrease the likelihood of a swarm losing a key peer or peers who are the sole providers of a required piece. The two considerations mean that seeds are not strictly necessary to complete a download, but research has shown that in the majority, approximately 86% of seedless cases, this sort of collective reconstruction is not feasible, and seeders do have a significant impact on file availability. To be clear, BitTorrent overall functions quite well already, and nothing we propose in this optimization will reverse the way current protocol works, nor are we suggesting an optimization that is expected to increase the aggregate sharing behavior to new participants who were not previously adding torrents. The addition we have in mind is simply to overlay on top of the current protocol, which will allow existing participants in BitTorrent swarms to allocate resources to each other more efficiently. To this end, we are developing a new BitTorrent feature called BitTorrent Speed, designed to enable peers to offer each other cryptographic token-based incentives to continue to seed files after the initial download has completed. The existing BitTorrent barter market will continue to intact, but participating BitTorrent clients will implement a new set of extensions to the BitTorrent protocol, allowing end users to engage in a market where BitTorrent tokens where both BitTorrent tokens and upload speed are used as market inputs. BitTorrent Speed is a feature that will be integrated into future BitTorrent and uTorrent clients and will enable users to advertise their bids within a swarm and trade BTT in exchange for continued prioritized access to seeds. The intended result is that peers will choose to seed for longer, leading to better swarm longevity and faster download speeds for all swarm participants. I can see a potential here where also it would incentivize buying up a bunch of Tron tokens and then not reseeding. If you can imagine for a moment how that would take place, you would have a really low efficiency node, right? So it would take a lot more resources to connect to that node. and then you bid up the price of that node. Anyway, continuing on. Our approach to implementing BitTorrent speed starts with how BitTorrent currently allocates resources. BitTorrent uses a sharing algorithm called tit for tat, which is implemented using a mechanism called choking. BitTorrent clients classify peers as either choked or unchoked. Only unchoked peers are eligible to receive data from the client. The choke state of all peers is recalculated periodically, typically every 15 seconds. As an example of choking algorithm might sort peers by how much data the client has received from each one since the choking algorithm was last executed. The first peers are then unchoked and the rest choked, where n is the number of unchoked slots, a fixed value chosen by each client implementation. Seeds do not receive any data from peers, so they use the amount of data sent to each peer instead. This means seeds optimize for maximum throughput with no regard for fairness or anything else for that matter. There are also a number of unchoked slots, typically one which are reserved for a separate choking algorithm called, quote, optimistic unchoking. Optimistic unchoking selects peers to unchoke in a random or round-robin fashion. This allows new peers an opportunity to receive some data so that they can start reciprocating with other peers. Choking is the primary means of allocating services within a BitTorrent swarm. It is this mechanism that we will adapt to allow for clients to offer rewards to others for continued seeding of content they want to access to. Allowing clients to bid BTT for preferential treatment by the choking algorithm gives them a powerful tool to offer incentives to seeds to remain in a swarm. Operational description of BitTorrent speed. Peers will act as both service requesters and service providers. A peer offering BTT in exchange for other users' local resources is a service requester, and a service offering offering such services in exchange for BTT is a service provider. Service discovery. The BitTorrent speed application lifecycle begins when peers discover each other via existing BitTorrent protocol mechanisms. They announce to a tracker using an info hash or find peers for a given hash in the DHT. This way, info hashes naturally segment the space of all peers into swarms of users with a common interest in exchanging pieces of a set of files. Potential service providers in a swarm are either seeds, peers having a complete locally downloaded copy of a torrent, or peers with partial copies. These service providers advertise what pieces they have available via the existing protocol have message. Agreement. Initial balance. Prior to making the first bid in their client's lifetime, a service requester must establish a BTT balance. It does this by placing some BTT in a payment channel between the service requester and service provider. Initial bidding round. The initial bid is sent via a new bid BitTorrent protocol extension message sent to each peer having some pieces required by the service requester. The message contains the number of BTT the service requester is willing to bid per piece. Okay. Announcing to trackers. An extension to the BitTorrent tracker protocol, the bid-announce key, allows clients to include their current bid when they announce themselves to trackers. The extension adds two new request parameters which allow clients to request peers with the highest bids. Due to the longest intervals between announcements, announces 30 minutes or more, clients must not trust bids returned by trackers. If a peer's bid turns out to be radically lower than what the tracker claimed, then clients should disconnect that peer. A second tracker protocol extension, bid-scrape, allows service providers to retrieve lists of info hashes and recent bids for service against those info hashes. This allows service providers to find torrents in need of supplemental bandwidth in a very efficient and decentralized way. Reserve prices. Each torrent a client is seeding has a reserve price associated with it. We plan to implement a user-configurable mechanism with defaults designed to enable rewards sought by seeders to grow over time. The default reserve price starts at 0 when the torrent is completed and increases as a function of the time since the torrent was last known to be possessed by a peer. Possession by another peer can be proven by a peer submitted a proof of possession of a selected chunk within the torrent. When a peer connection is opened, the client sends a reserve price message containing the reserve price and index of a chunk whose hash may be sent to prove another seed possesses the torrent. The reserve price message is also sent on all connections when the reserve price or proof chunk changes. The proof of possession may be sent to the client in a source proof message which contains the piece index, the chunk index, and the hash of the chunk. When a valid proof is received, the torrent's reserve price is reset to 0. The chunk used as the challenge to prove possession of a piece should be one which the client has not uploaded recently. The client maintains a bitmap for each torrent where each bit represents one chunk. When the client uploads a chunk, its corresponding bit is set to 1. When all bits for a torrent become 1, they are cleared to 0. The client selects which chunk to require by taking the output of a pseudo-random number generator, PRNG, seeded with a secret value, XORed, with the torrent's info hash. If the selected chunk's bit is set to 1, the PRNG is invoked again until the selected chunk's bit is 0. Autobid. In other words, it's mined. Autobid. For the initial release clients, release clients will use a simplified auto bidding mechanism. In this version, the client simply bids a fraction of the remaining BTT balance in its wallet. The bid is calculated as such: bid equals spending rate times remaining balance in BTT divided by remaining download in bytes divided by 1024. This formula implies that as the download progresses, the bid can change. For the initial release, the client will not rebid until the bid changes by more than 10% from the previous bid and the spending rate, a parameter that can vary from 0.0 to 1.0 depending on how aggressive the client should be in bidding, will be defined to be 1.0. In the future, this simple algorithm will be refined. For example, based on existing bid message traffic and current transfers, the client can estimate market rate for unchoked slots. The client also has a picture of piece rarity through normal BitTorrent mechanics. Clients may choose to automatically bid limited amounts if it seems likely they will be able to send rare pieces to more peers who are bidding for slots at a higher rate. The incentive-based behavior more closely models network bandwidth topology than classic tit-for-tat. Maybe. Bidding user interface. Bidding will take place by default in an automated fashion. Users' clients will earn and bid to and from their token balance on their behalf. We may expose user interface controls to enable users to turn on or off the feature, turn it on or off for certain torrents, adjust the spending rate parameter, set reserve prices, or exercise even more fine-grained control over the bidding process. This is assuming that the value of the token doesn't change during the transaction time. Hold on a moment, I gotta rehydrate here. Bidding revisions and frequency. As the client may receive data for less than its maximum bid, and very frequently for free, as is currently the case with BitTorrent, the bid computed by dividing and remaining total spend by the remaining data will creep upwards over time. The client can implement any heuristic it likes to determine when to send bid messages with a new bid value, but it should not send new bids more than once a minute. For example, the client could send new bids when its bid value changes by more than 10%. I'm detecting an attack surface here, kids. If the user changes the total BTT amount, then of course the client should send new bids immediately. Matchmaking. A peer participating in the traditional BitTorrent protocol makes decisions about which other peers to send data to, unchoke, on a periodic basis, largely on the basis of how quickly it is receiving data from each. We extend this unchoke mechanism so that a service provider will include both bid data and peer upload rate in its decisions about which peer to unchoke. In mixed swarms with BTT-enabled BitTorrent clients and legacy BitTorrent clients, service requesters will offer BTT to seeders, but download speeds will be saturated without regard for whether a given seed was offered BTT or not. This will retain BitTorrent's competitive bandwidth market, where a seed offering fast speeds will continue to be effective regardless if another one has set up a reserve price in BTT in return for seeding. The optimistic unchoke slot should not be subject to the same auction format as the regular unchoked slots. Caution must be exercised when dealing with optimistic unchoking due to its importance in allowing new peers to bootstrap into the swarm. If the client is using a round-robin algorithm for optimizing unchoking, it should only apply an auction to break ties between peers which have gone the same amount of time since being choked. In practice, this means auctioning of the optimistic unchoked slot will typically only happen between bidders who have never been unchoked. When it comes time for the client to run its choking algorithm, as described above, it first compiles a list of eligible bidders. A bidder is eligible if it is equal to or greater than the torrent's reserve price, if any is defined. The integration of an auction into choking will vary depending on how the client's choking algorithm is implemented. The example algorithm described above could be modified to first sort peers by highest eligible bid, then by most data received. When an eligible bidder is unchoked, the service provider first sends a new protocol extension message bid-response or bid-response to the bidder containing the rate of BTT/byte the bidder is expected to pay and the details of the payment channel to which the BTT must be sent. The indicated rate must be less than or equal to the rate received from the bidder. This message is followed by a normal unchoked message. If a winning bidder is already unchoked and the required payment rate has changed, the bidder is first choked and all requests rejected before the bid dash response and unchoked messages. Clients may implement any auction format they please, but a variant of the Vickray-Clark-Groves auction is expected to produce optimum results. See Figure 2 for outline of mechanics, which turns out to be a multi-unit uniform price auction. Each service requester bids on only one unchoked slot per service provider. Clients would therefore charge each unchoked bidder at the rate of the highest losing bid or the reserve price of the requested torrent, whichever is higher. If there is only a single bidder, it is charged the reserve price. This means that there is always a base level incentive for bidders to ask for service, as in the absence of any other bids, that they will get the service for the reserve price regardless of what they bid. And we're not looking at Figure 2. Transaction processing. Once a service requester receives unchoke and bid response messages, it sends a contract to the private ledger for the amount of a single piece at BTT/byte rate. We define the client to be the party sending BTT and the seeder to be the party receiving it. Number 1. Client creates a public key, K1, and requests a public key from the seeder, K2. Number 2. Client creates and signs but does not send to a payment channel a transaction, T1, that sets up a payment of BTT/byte rate times the number of bytes needed to an output requiring both the seeder's private key and a client key. Using op_check multisig. Number 3. Client creates a refund transaction, T2, that is connected to the output of T1, which sends all money back to the client. It has a time lock set for some time in the future, several times longer than the expected download time, plus a few hours. The client doesn't sign it and provides the unsigned transaction to the seeder. By convention, the output script is 2K1, K22, check multisig. Number 4. Seeder signs T2 using its private key associated with K2 and returns the signature to the client. Note that it has not seen T1 at this point, just the hash, which is in the unsigned T2. Number 5. The client verifies the seeder's signature is correct and aborts if it is not. Number 6. The client signs T1 and passes the signature to the seeder, which now sends the transaction to the payment channel. Either party can do this if they both have connectivity. This locks in the BTT. 7. The client then creates a new transaction, T3, which connects to T1 like the refund transaction does and has two outputs. One goes to K1 and the other goes to K2. It starts out with all value allocated to the first output, K1, i.e. it does the same thing as the refund transaction but is not time locked. Client signs T3 and provides the transaction and signature to the seeder. Number 8. The seeder verifies the output to itself is of the expected size and verifies the client's provided signature is correct. Number 9. When the client wishes to pay the seeder, it adjusts its copy of T3 to allocate more value to the seeder output and less to its own. It then re-signs the new T3 and sends the signature to the seeder. It does not have to send the whole transaction, just the signature, and the amount to increment by it is sufficient. Weird. The seeder adjusts the copy of T3 to match the new amounts, verifies the signature, and continues. This continues until the transfer ends, or the timeout from step 3 is getting close to expiry. The seeder then signs the last transaction it saw and sends it to the payment channel, allocating the final amount to itself. The refund transaction is needed to handle the case where the seeder disappears or halts at any point, leaving the allocated value in limbo. If this happens, then once the lock has expired, the client can then send the refund transaction to the payment channel and get back all the BTT. Gosh, it sounds just like Lightning Network. The time lock and sequence numbers avoid an attack in which the seeder provides pieces and then the client double spends the output back to themselves using the first version of TX2. Thus preventing the seeder from claiming the BTT. If the user does try this, the TX won't be included right away, giving the seeder a window of time in which it can observe the TX from the payment channel and then send the last version it saw, overriding the client's attempt to double spend. As normal, when the service provider receives an unchoked message, the service provider will begin to send pieces. Service provider. That sounds like a trusted third party who will probably incur a lot of regulatory friction and have to charge more for their services than they ordinarily would. If for some reason the transfer does not complete after a timeout, the service requester is choked and receives no further data. Repeated failures to transfer BTT by a service requester can result in the service provider banning the service requester. Banned service requester peers are disconnected and any attempt to reconnect by the service requester is rejected for some period of time. Similarly, failure to verify data from the service provider can result in the service provider being banned. Each party progressively contributes bandwidth, pieces, or BTT with a signed transaction produced for each step in the process. The maximum breach exposure of the service provider at any given time is therefore one piece worth of bandwidth. And since service requesters pay only on verified delivery, they have zero breach exposure. Generalized BTT services. Optimizing the existing BitTorrent protocol is an obvious first step in the introduction of a cryptographic token, but it barely scratches the surface of what is rapidly becoming possible. The precedent being set is allowing users to store value from sharing small amounts of infrastructure in order to spend it later. We are setting ourselves on a path to dramatically extend both the earning opportunities and the spending opportunities for users of BTT-enabled BitTorrent clients. To address earning opportunities, we are developing a range of generalized BTT services and preparing to open up the platform to third-party developers who could make use of those services provided in return for paying BTT. As a result of extensive discussions with partners interested in our platform, we've concluded that there will be 3 BTT services offered at first. Number 1, a decentralized content delivery service to enable service requesters to advertise bids and paid BTT for bandwidth to receive a particular piece of content. This service will be well suited for mass distribution of content, especially in the presence of censors or other type of attackers. Service providers will be incentivized to make available content which they can serve to as many people as possible, thus ensuring robust performance even with very large numbers of service requesters. Number 2, a decentralized storage service to enable service requesters to pay for storage over time. Service providers will agree to store some amount of data and provide proofs of storage to the service requester on demand. Service requesters will also be able to download the stored data from the service provider for a prearranged fee. Service providers will seek out content which offers the highest payment rate over time. This service will be useful for remote backup and sharing of private data among small groups. Number 3, a decentralized proxying service to enable service requesters to pay a client for retrieval of content by URL. This will be useful to highly mobile applications or those which seek to evade IP-level network controls. The protocol will also be designed to allow content to be requested in chunks. This will, for example, allow clients with intermittent connectivity, such as mobile users relying on Wi-Fi, to reliably retrieve web resources without needing to maintain an open connection long enough to receive the complete contents. More BTT services can be implemented and introduced into the network of service providers as demand emerges from new BTT applications. BitTorrent Foundation will provide a forum for discussion and standardization of new BTT services similar to what it provides for the BitTorrent protocol. As characterized in Figure 3, the various enhancements to the BitTorrent protocol as well as the BTT transaction processing approach outlined will be formally documented. These components will serve as building blocks for distributed applications. Let's see here. BitTorrent protocol extensions will be submitted for comments to the BitTorrent Community BEP process, an informal but open standard setting process, and facilitated by BitTorrent Foundation that has guided protocol enhancements for over a decade. Following community feedback, we will develop and test our implementation of these extensions via engineering and release management practices which are well established at BitTorrent. Furthermore, as our normal practice with highly important updates, we will subsequently release these extensions as an open source library and establish support and incentives for integration into third-party BitTorrent or other clients in order to broaden the pool of clients that can support BTT applications as much as possible. BTT incentives. The continued evolution of the BitTorrent ecosystem in this type of productive direction will require coordination and incentives provided to a broad range of existing and future participants. Other BitTorrent client implementations, third-party app developers, and other online publishers will all be eligible for a system of BTT incentive rewards. The BitTorrent ecosystem has proven over many years that millions of people will enthusiastically share their resources if they can cooperate safely and securely. If they can cooperate safely and securely bound by the rules of the protocol they trust. By introducing a mechanism for value storage and exchange, we aim to greatly broaden the universe of possible participants. Either service requesters, service providers, or both. To maximize chances for success, it is vital that we ensure that BitTorrent Inc. is not a central monopolist for the BTT-enabled BitTorrent ecosystem, just as it is far from a monopolist in the BitTorrent ecosystem of today. This will require coordination of activities and provision of incentives to a broad range of existing and future participants. The BTT project depicted in Figure 4 is one where the success of the ecosystem partners will lead to increasing returns for all ecosystem participants. The purpose of the BTT incentives will be to promote the BTT project to current and prospective participants, be they service providers, service requesters, or both. This means finding and introducing new application developers who are interested in participating in service requests or service provision. Govern membership and participation rules among participants in the BTT ecosystem with an overriding objective of establishing a level playing field on which all can participate fairly. Govern the equitable and transparent distribution of rewards and incentives that promising ideas have a fair chance and productive outcomes are fairly rewarded. Work in conjunction with volunteers on BitTorrent.org to facilitate discussion around future-related BitTorrent protocol extensions, Once the BTT project is running sustainably, we may consider transitioning the rules and procedures it has established for administering BTT incentives into a lower overhead instrument such as a decentralized autonomous organization. Oh, like those don't get hacked. To begin with, however, the immediate future will require more human ingenuity and flexibility, which is why we believe that we must invest heavily, both people and tokens, in BTT incentives. Implementation considerations. Blockchain. BTT applications will be supported by native BitTorrent users who number in the tens of millions each day. To minimize the opportunities for fraud, BTT applications will provide service in small increments, then wait for payment to be confirmed before more service is provided. This will require transactions to be handled at a granular level and confirmed in a matter of seconds, and ideally less than a second. Furthermore, even our most conservative estimates of capacity requirements anticipate dozens of transactions per second. With these needs in mind, it is clear that existing public blockchains will not be able to support on-chain processing and settlement anytime soon. That's not true, dude. Not really. User controls. We plan to introduce features like BitTorrent speed and BitTorrent transaction support into BitTorrent and uTorrent clients in a phased way to allow us to iterate towards the clearest possible user education journey and thus optimize end user participation. In other words, slowly increase the boil on the frog until it's too late for him to get out of the pot. Continuing on. Participation in the BTT transactions is required to be both fully disclosed and optimal for end users. BitTorrent wallets. As part of the rollout of the new BitTorrent and uTorrent software that can participate in the BTT applications, we will be distributed integrated cryptocurrency wallets to all users. As we will be distributing these wallets on a large scale to mass market end users and not necessarily cryptocurrency enthusiasts, we will need to pay close attention to simplicity and usability. Bootstrapping the available BTT application will be the BitTorrent speed feature, which will be unproven at the outset. Given new user requester services will take time to become prevalent at any scale, we may additionally pursue a strategy to pre-seed the market with promotional quantities of BTT. Use case diversification for BTT. The introduction of BTT wallets on the scale anticipated by this project may create opportunities for new users for the token that are wholly unrelated to BitTorrent technology. We expect many millions of users will be able to accumulate small quantities of BTT that may not have material value until they are aggregated by service providers. That is to say that users who may accumulate only a small amount of BTT from providing services will look for ways to spend that token that go beyond their need for incentivizing seeding. In due course, we expect to evangelize this new capability and explore partnerships that can accelerate merchant acceptance of this new type of micropayment mechanism. This will be particularly advantageous to merchants who want to aggregate and use tokens to pay for infrastructure services to support their ongoing services. We expect to be able to establish an economy as characterized in Figure 5, where BTT are introduced into the economy primarily by distributed app developers, are then traded between service requesters and service providers within and beyond the BitTorrent ecosystem, and may ultimately aggregate in commercially significant pools at some service providers who may then be part of the BitTorrent ecosystem or may not. At this point of the cycle, the BTT will be returned via the open market to new service requesters who would like to exchange them for distributed infrastructure services provided by BitTorrent users. And a diagram there. And there's BTT token issuance. Our objectives for an offering are we will create a total supply of 900 billion BTT. The total supply will be divided as follows: the allocation to BitTorrent Inc., torrent client users as part of the client install and onboarding, the allocation to existing TRX holders, the initial supporters and investors, the BitTorrent Foundation and team, the Tron Foundation. Users of BitTorrent Inc.'s torrent clients and possibly other torrent clients which choose to implement the required set of protocol extensions will be able to submit a CAPTCHA or proof of work, which will allow them to access an initial balance of BTT. Conclusion: we have presented our motivation, qualifications, and plans for extending BitTorrent via the BTT project, starting with a new core feature designed to improve the BitTorrent ecosystem, and a new cryptographic token, and a practical implementation of cryptographic token transaction processing at scale. We have outlined how we are generalizing this approach to enable other distributed app developers to use a distributed infrastructure platform composed of over 100 million consumer BitTorrent clients for the provision of networking and storage resources in return for BTT. In particular, we have described 3 novel distributed apps for independent app developers that plan to make use of the platform and outlined the value they see in it. We have described the mission and operation of the BTT Incentives Program, which will be dedicated to driving the number and success of BTT distributed apps. It will manage the progressive release and distribution of BTT to ecosystem participants which are successful in driving useful platform adoption. We have discussed some important implementation considerations and challenges and how we expect to address them, and we have presented a plan for how tokens will be issued and stored in the pursuit of a stable and thriving economy built around the sharing of computing resources by millions of ecosystem participants. The potential of this project is compelling, not just because of the disruptive decentralized applications that it will enable, but also because of its open ecosystem approach that will welcome and reward participants at entry level, and finally because of the enormous head start the BitTorrent ecosystem enjoys in the building and deploying of a decentralized computing economy. And we are done. And there is some Q&A on here too that I think we ought to get into. A little bit of FAQ. Why not rewrite the BitTorrent protocol? The maturation of cryptocurrency projects like Bitcoin is one more proof, just like BitTorrent, that distributed protocols can implement incentives that allow large numbers of untrusted network participants to collaborate productively. Bitcoin's novelty compared to BitTorrent is that it introduces the blockchain concept, enabling collaboration can endure over time, unlike BitTorrent, where collaborations are transient and occur in wholly separate and unrelated events called swarms. We considered a fundamental rewrite of BitTorrent protocol to allow collaboration to be persisted over time and to ensure the right seeding behavior was rewarded, so that more long-tail content, valuable content with only occasional demand, would be available for longer. We imagined a protocol which would both download like BitTorrent and hand out longer-term incentives like Bitcoin mining rewards. After lengthy consideration, we discounted this approach for several reasons. Number one, difficulty of the problem. Implementing an incentive system at the protocol level requires precise thinking about objectives. We found it impossible to articulate clearly what the long-tail seeding objectives should be and how to avoid gaming them. There are plenty of BitTorrent swarms that die because literally no one cares. Ergo, some better version of a file becomes available. The only tractable answer seemed to be to implement a voting system to let consumers judge. But that seemed to call into question the desire to wrap everything into the protocol. In short, trying to programmatically discern between what should and should not be preserved seemed like a problem we were poorly equipped to answer without asking end users. Number two, the need to be strictly better than existing BitTorrent, aka soft fork, not hard fork. Any protocol rewrite would have to be compatible with the existing BitTorrent ecosystem. This immediately rules out things like penalties for not seeding. Consumers would just choose to use clients which implemented the old BitTorrent protocol, which did not penalize them. The parallel to this issue within existing Bitcoin space is the growing difficulty of implementing hard forks. The BitTorrent ecosystem is now so big that a hard fork would have an extremely low chance of success. Number three, conviction that we were overcomplicating the solution. The likely need for human agency in the system, people voting, convinced us that we should focus on simpler extensions to BitTorrent as is and design a voting system that was based around an existing cryptocurrency. This has the advantage of allowing the market to determine what should be seeded while leaving BitTorrent enhanced but not changed at its core. Why did BitTorrent not include incentives when it was invented? In fact, research into projects that were forerunners to BitTorrent did try to imagine how a system of persistent incentives might be managed. They foundered largely due to the difficulty of finding an effective solution to, quote, keep the score while operating at scale. Blockchain and distributed ledger solutions using cryptographic tokens present a powerful way to keep the score such that transactions can be processed and a ledger may be managed at scale even in the absence of perfect trust between all counterparties. How can this solution help me get around net neutrality adversaries? Some examples. Proxying from IP to IP will enable users to find content that is blocked by an ISP in their geography by connecting it via an intermediary to which both site and requester can connect. How will you protect end users' computers from malicious attacks? The usage of end users' technical resources will be strictly limited to the provision of technical services like networking or storage within carefully bounded limits. Network connections will be protected by UTP, a self-adjusting bandwidth mechanism which ensures applications throttle back if there is any indication of other apps, even on other devices, using the network connection. Storage will be encrypted and limited to a user configurable maximum, and users will be able to configure which applications they accept and which they do not. The provision of BTT services is limited to simple infrastructure operations and in no way will permit untrusted third parties to execute code on a user's device. Can users opt out? What if they don't want to provide their resources or earn tokens? Yes. Users will always be able to configure the parameters of their sharing or switch it off entirely if they choose. There should be nothing mandatory about this ecosystem, and users will retain the right to opt out for any reason. Yeah. Okay, so there you have it. Yeah, like I said, I think all in all, it appears as though they intend to use the existing BitTorrent network as their network. And so I think that's one of the places where that FUD piece we read earlier was wrong, was that he was assuming that they were going to be putting it on Tron's network. No. BitTorrent already has an existing network. Why reinvent the wheel while it's rolling? Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. I definitely need to refresh after that one. Very, very long. And so, in honor of the time it took, here it is. Anthrax, Time, here on CoinMetal. Oh, there we go. One of these days. Oh, I guess the program decided to cheese out on me yet one more time. That's okay. Like I said, we're probably hammering the shit out of the server right now, and that's a good thing. And so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and throw it down. Let's go ahead and connect. And yeah, we're on the right. Okay, and so we're re-hooked up again. Sorry about that. A little bit of disconnection there. But yeah, so here it is. Anthrax, Time, here on CoinMetal. And that was Sixth with Bland Street Blue. And yeah, so that's about it. Gonna go ahead and wrap it up for the evening. As far as the FUD, like I said, I think that I think that it was just a misread on the part of that developer from whatever it was from. This guy, let's see here. I'm trying to find the original article the one on breakermag.com. Anyway, his assessment of how this thing is going to roll out. He seemed to be under the impression that they intended to stack it all on the Tron network, and in all honesty, I didn't get that impression from that white paper at all. I actually got more an image in my mind that they intended to use the existing BitTorrent network. So that opens up things like the possibility that they intend to cryptojack every single motherfucker out there that's seeding and basically, use them as the network. And, I think it's kind of funny, really, because that's been something I've been waiting for to happen, just like some app, and I'm sure it's already happening out there or whatever, that, there's some app out there that's got a little light miner in the background, and you don't notice it because it's always running, but it only takes just a teeny tiny bit of your system resources at any one time, and so you don't really notice it. Well, I have a feeling that future BitTorrent clients will have within them a little like CoinHive style shadow miner that's, it's running in the background. You hardly even notice it. You're already dedicating your system resources to helping out one network. Why not use it to help out another, right? It's kind of smart thinking, but the question will be whether or not you have control and how much control you have over exactly what you contribute at any one time, and how that will affect your use of BitTorrent. I mean, because if it makes your experience of BitTorrent suck, you're probably not going to mine it either. You're probably not going to download their application and mine it, that is. And it is with that I'm going to go ahead and close this episode out. We will be back again on Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so until then, I'd like you all to trade safe. Do your homework. Watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. As far as our last dance is concerned, I've been feeling a hankering for this. So the last dance is going to have to be body count. And as far as which song, I've got to get back up to where exactly it is. And I don't know. I'm thinking, I'm feeling like this is it. Talk shit, get shot. Last dance here on Coin Metal. Thank you very, very much for listening, and you all have an excellent weekend.